Hey everybody. In today's video, I'm going to do a very fun technique for three-dimensional paper piecing. This was a technique that I learned on Splitcoast a long time ago, and some of you may know this as a way to do paper toll. So paper toll kits typically will have a bunch of different pieces that you adhere down to a base picture at a bunch of different heights so that the finished piece looks extremely three-dimensional. So those kits are all pre-cut, and it's not a super popular craft here. I think it's a little bit bigger in Europe, but you can completely recreate it with stamps, which is what I am doing today. And I do have a couple of notes on good products to use. The product that I'm using actually is very difficult to find in the United States, so I'm going to give you an awesome alternate for it. But I'm starting with this adorable little girl image, and what I've done is stamped her twice and then cut out the parts that I want to be 3D. So I want the balloon to be 3D, the little kitty head, the little blanket that the kitty is wrapped in, and then her arm. So what you'll do is you'll pick the portions of the image that naturally are in front of other parts of the image. So she has her arm out in front of her holding that sweet little kitty. And so those are the ones that I chose to be popped up. Same with the balloon. The balloon would be one of the more dimensional things in this scene. So there are some tips for coloring. You saw me edge all the pieces in black before I started, the pieces that I cut out, and that's really important. One of the things about this technique is you don't want any white showing on your three-dimensional pieces or underneath your three-dimensional pieces, and I'll show you how we achieve that. But then your next step is just to color the entire image. So I'm using a combination of Copic and Graphite alcohol markers. I like the graphite markers because they have this teeny tiny detail nib that is great for small images like this. I do have a coupon code for these if you are interested in these markers. And I'm just coloring her dress pink. I'm going to color the blanket green just for a good complementary pop. And then I'm giving her little jeans underneath her dress, and the balloon will be pink to match her dress as well. Her sweater is going to be a bright yellow. Now, some of the little pieces that you've cut out are really small. I like to fussy cut them. If you want to learn this technique, you might want to start with a larger image than I've started with here. This one is, because I've done this technique so many times, I don't mind doing the smaller images, but you might want to start with a bigger one. The key to getting the little pieces dimensional is going to be a little embossing that we do with a stylus. And when you are embossing with a stylus, I will have some little tips for you and tell you why we do it that way. The balloon is the easiest part to color and cut out. It's a nice simple shape. So when you're choosing an image that you want to do this technique on, choosing a simple shape is a good idea too. Now notice that the parts that I've cut out, I am not coloring those the same as I'm coloring the top part, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. I'm going to give her some brown hair, and I will use 2 or 3 shades of brown just to give the illusion of light on the top and sides of her head. This is such an easy way to color hair. I'm not an expert hair colorer by any means, but if I just go from light to dark, I can get that sort of three-dimensional look. So that is super easy to do. The coloring on this image is actually pretty easy. I'll use a Copic multi-liner and just leave one little white spot on her shoes so that it looks like she's wearing shiny Mary Janes. Now the little cut out pieces you do want to color to match the rest of the image. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to give the kitty a little brown head that's sort of similar to her hair. And give him just a little bit of dimension with some shading. And I will add a little bit of shading. You'll see in the close-up that there's actually quite a bit of shading on some of these elements, but you do want to color them before you emboss them. Now find yourself a good dark gray. You could even use black, and everything that has a cutout piece, you will want to color a very dark color underneath. The reason for that is when you are embossing the raised pieces, those pieces will actually shrink a little bit as they get three-dimensional. And so underneath, you just want to show shadow. You don't want to have any white, uncolored space or colored space underneath each of those little pieces. You'll just want that to look like a shadow. So I'm taking a metal embossing tool and I'm just very gently in a circular motion stretching the fibers and pressing this balloon into the foam pad. This is what makes it three-dimensional. And I just go around and around and around in the center, and that makes the center part pop out. But you'll want to do this kind of slowly, because if you press too hard, you can actually form little creases in the cardstock. You want to gently rub in a circular motion to avoid any of those little creases and just gently break down those paper fibers to create that rounded shape that you're looking for. On the little itty bitty pieces, I'm using the smaller end of this stylus and doing the same thing, just gentle circular motion to break down those little fibers. On her little arm, which is so teeny, it's not much is needed really. Okay, so I'm using this dimensional adhesive from Europe. This is great because it stays wet long enough for you to move the little pieces around, but it also is really thick, so it lets you raise the pieces up as high as you want. The key is don't press them down very much at all. You want those to pop away from the base image. So put yourself a dot of this or the recommended alternate that I'm going to tell you about, which is a beautiful, clear 3D tape. It's called foam tape, but it's actually a clear tape, and that is a great substitute for this sort of hard to find adhesive. So I will put a link to that below, and it works just beautifully with this technique. So let me show you what she looks like up close. You can see that little kitty head is the highest, raised the highest of all of the pieces. I wanted that to pop out the most. You can control that with how much adhesive you use. If you're using the tape instead of the glue, you could even put 2 layers on your highest piece and see why you want that darker shadow underneath. It really just looks like a shadow. You're not seeing any of colored detail or any of white space, anything like that. You just have a beautiful 3D paper pieced little girl with interesting little elements that are sort of popping out towards the viewer on your card. Now, the great thing about the clear tape as well is it dries instantly. So this one I will need to let dry for a little bit, but here's what it looks like on the finished card. I did a little gel press background and added a word die. Head over to my blog for more information, and thanks so much for watching.